is Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio.world and our weekly coverage of the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. Again, we've been doing this since March 13th. Initially, hyper focusing on how this was impacting our communities in South Seattle. We knew that when this started, that our community would probably bear the brunt of the implications that were coming along with the coronavirus. And yes, certainly we know now that those conditions that the pandemic brought on were exacerbated in communities of color. I'm your host, Tony B., and we've got, again, a great lineup of shows for you to talk about how the coronavirus is impacting our communities. A little later on in the program, John Yasutake will be interviewing a guest from the Rainier Valley Corps, and he'll also be talking to Sherilyn Easton, who is, a citizen who just decided that, hey, with the pandemic, I'm a fan of Halloween, and I'm going to build a safely socially distanced haunted house in my yard. It's pretty incredible with animatronics and other things, and no-touch candy where you can go through. So that's going to be on a little bit later. Also, immediately following me, I guess will be Betty Lau and Brian Chow, and they'll be talking about the Chinatown International District and SID and the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on SID. Joining me right now from the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle is my guest, Advocacy and Civic Engagement Coordinator, Maya Manus. Maya, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Under the circumstances, I'm fantastic, Maya. Did I say your last name correctly? Is it Manus?
Yes.
All
correct.
right. Well, thank you for joining us. What we're going to be talking about, including not exclusively, but is the upcoming on the 28th National Black Voter Registration Day. We want to talk about that. And registering voters is something that the pandemic has definitely impacted and affected. I also want to talk a little bit about Census Day. But before we get to those things, Maya, can you tell us a little bit about the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle for folks who may not be familiar or folks who are familiar, but just need a refresher on who you are and the role that you play in our communities?
Yes, so the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle is 90 years old and is a direct service organization focusing on employment, education, housing, health, and civic engagement. And so what we do is we figure out what African Americans and other vulnerable populations may need, whether it's those who are experiencing homelessness, those who are released from incarceration, and more to see what do we need to be able to do to make sure that they are self-sufficient and they feel empowered. So we have done things where I need to go. I'm on a call. Sorry about that. And so we do things where we help people who are facing foreclosures. We help also help people who are needing employment due to experiencing homelessness, due to incarceration. And then also with get out to vote efforts, we help people, fill out their census, get out to vote, and other things to be able to make sure that that they know what they need to know to be able to do those things. So we do so many other things. I highly suggest those to check out our website to see how we can best assist with their situation, because we've been very impactful and helpful with people who are falling behind on hard times before COVID-19 and during the pandemic.
Maya, we are in the midst of, and again, you can say this is opinion or fact-based opinion, or maybe just simply fact, however you want to look at it. But I'm going to call it a toxic electoral season for a number of different reasons: the pandemic, the isolation, the 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 candidates and what's going on there, and then on top of that, the civil unrest that has occurred due to systemic oppression that is now something that has come to light for many folks, and here we are, and we're about to elect a leader of the country. At this time, with all of these things going on, it makes it more difficult to get the message out to folks about voting, about the importance of voting, and in particular, first-time voters. So let's talk about, to start with, National Black Registration Day for voters. Tell us about it, why it exists, and what's going on this year, when it's taking place.
Yes, so actually, National Black Voter Registration Day is today.
Oh, it's today.
National Urban League, yes. So National Urban League and BET partnered today to really make a stance on the fact that Black Americans should reclaim their vote and protest to the polls by registering to vote and understanding what they need to be able to make sure that they can get their ballot, especially in other states, not like Washington, where they might need to get an absentee ballot. And so what the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle is really focusing on, and what our campaign is This Person Votes, which we're really trying to target first-time voters because we understand that, there's a lot of attention on the national politics, but when an 18 to 24-year-old who is filling out the ballot for maybe the very first time, they might feel a little bit surprised to find out that there's a lot more on the ballot. So we're really trying to focus on letting them know all of the things that they would need to know for their whole ballot, both nationally and locally. And then this is in lockstep with National Voter Registration Week, which is happening all next week, where we'll be having different facts on our website for people to know about registering specifically in Washington State, as well as a youth roundtable happening next week as well.
And thank you, Maya. Let me make sure I have my facts straight here. So on the 24th, what's taking place on the 24th?
That's going to be our youth roundtable. So what we're doing is we're getting a group of young people together that have the opportunity to vote for the first time, and having a conversation to see, how are they feeling about registering to vote, and how do they feel about, connecting their issues to the ballot and being able to make sure that, hearing from them, because right now, 18 to 24-year-olds, there's about 7.7 million of them. And so we're really trying to focus on that population to be able to make sure that they understand that their vote matters, because they're becoming one of the highest voting blocks in the nation.
And according to information that I have, in 2016, that 18 to 24-year-old demographic voted the least of all of the demographics.
Yeah, that seems to be the notion. Right now, that the last time I looked, that the average voting age in Washington State is 63. So that really shows like how many young people actually go to the polls.
Well, let's again talk about something here that for a lot of folks, they may say, you know what difference does it make if I vote? This stuff's going to happen. I'm not connected to the sphere of influence, and so what I do doesn't make a difference anyway. And I don't see how the things that are being discussed and talked about by candidates are impacting my day-to-day life. What is wrong with, I said, what needs to happen? How do you engage folks, youth, everyone in particular, to understand the importance of voting? Or would you disagree with that? Would you say that voting is not that important?
I believe voting is one of the best things we can do as our civic duty, besides jury duty, which is a whole nother conversation. But if you want to see how your state recovers from COVID-19, if you want to know how your schools are going to be able to go back face to face. If you want to know how your local favorite coffee shop or your favorite local Black owned business thrives post COVID-19, you're going to want to make sure that you fill out your ballot, because the local, especially the local elections, who is going down to Olympia, is going to have the deciding factor on how Washington State is going to recover post COVID-19.
Do you have information on how the coronavirus pandemic is impacting first-time voters, in particular first-time Black voters, in the registration process and the voting process? We know that now there is an effort to get out the mail-in ballot. We also know that there's resistance and suppression to that. Do you have information that you can share with us? Because it's something that people may be slightly aware of, but may not really know about. How is the pandemic impacting and affecting voter registration, and particularly among Black voters and first-time Black voters?
Yeah, so National Voter Registration, the organization, believes that about 1 million new registered voters are missing out on the opportunity to register to vote since COVID-19 has started. And that's just because the tactic has always been, going to where they are, concerts, food, farmers markets, different places, and asking people to register to vote. And that's how they do it. So since we've, closed down, it's kind of hard to engage people to be able to register to vote. And then the great thing about Washington State is that we can register to vote online if you have your Washington State ID. So if anybody wants to register to vote, they can do so online. We have a spot on our website for them to register to vote, or they can go to votewall.gov and be able to register to vote from there. Also, to highlight the mail-in ballot comment that you made, Washington State is a mail-in ballot, so people will receive their ballot 18 days before Election Day to whatever address is on their registration. So, and then another great thing is King County currently has 72 drop boxes, so if they feel concerned going to putting it back in the mail with USPS, they can always put it into a drop box.
My guest again is Maya Manus, Advocacy and Civic Engagement Coordinator for the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. We're having a discussion about National Black Voter Registration Day, which is today. And then you said next week is National Voter Registration Week?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So there's been an organization, National Voter Registration Day, that is really trying to make it a national holiday for people to feel inclined to register to vote, make sure that their registration status is up to date and looking good. So all next week, you'll probably see many people, including the Urban League, highlight the importance of registering to vote all throughout the week next week to make sure that we get community to register to vote before ballots drop.
Now, what we hear about is the presidential election. That's what's in the news. That's what takes up a lot of the air in the room. But they have these other candidates that they call down ballot. And I would like to talk about that. In particular, and here, you can correct me again if I'm wrong here, understanding the vote in your own state, in your own community is probably going to be more impactful to you than that presidential election. And I'm not saying presidential election is not important, but speak to, if you will, Maya, the importance of understanding the candidates, their issues, and how they either connect or don't connect to what you feel to be important in this local election, why that is also so important.
Yes. So for your day-to-day life or anything that is bothering you, whether it be how I-5 is structured, whether it be how your school is ran, that's mostly local elections. And so what we believe at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle is specifically on your local issues, police accountability, healthcare, access to healthy food, access to direct cash assistance. The people who make those choices are your local state legislatures, as well as, the executive office with, the governor, the attorney general. And then also in terms of, the highlighting the criminal justice and social unrest right now is we are in Washington State, we vote for our judges. So if you want to know and have a voice on not only the legislature, but also, the judicial branch where, these are the people who make the sentencing guidelines and the court rules to be able to determine, certain things. And so for your day-to-day life and for what's happening and how we are going to recover quickly in Washington State specifically is going to be dependent on our state legislatures and our judicial branch.
My guest again is Maya Manus of the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. Maya, I'm going to stop here for a second and kind of do a PSA, a live, a live PSA. I'd like to, the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle and Rainier Avenue Radio have partnered to increase voter awareness and education during this political season. We're going to be doing a number of things, including broadcasting debates, gubernatorial debates, statewide debates, congressional debates, legislative debates, judicial debates. We're going to give you information on who's running for attorney general, who's running for commissioner of lands, who's running, and there's going to be debate for OSPI, which is in charge of our schools. All of this again to combat the pandemic and make sure that folks continue to get information and understand how important their vote is and understand the way voter suppression works. And we know that our communities face barriers, and we're going to have discussions on these barriers to voting. And some folks may be confused about voter eligibility, who can vote. You may be transient or unsheltered, and what you can do to make sure that your voice is heard. We're also going to be in schools teaching classes to students who are 16 and 17, and if you're 18, you can vote, but we'll be talking about pre-registration. All of this to engage and activate voters. Now, we're not going to tell you who to vote for, but we're going to try to provide you information so that you can connect the issues that are important to you to the candidate who you think best suits your needs. Okay, back to the program now. My guest again joining me is Maya Manus of the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. We're talking about National Black Voter Registration Day, which again is today. Maya is the Advocacy and Civic Engagement Coordinator for the Urban League. Maya, when you are in the process of saying, okay, how do we get this information out? You created a very comprehensive voter registration pamphlet. Let's talk about that a little bit, what that pamphlet is for and what's in that pamphlet.
Yes. So when what I created was a first-time voter guide, which is called This Person Votes. And so
you're right, first-time voter guide. I'm calling it a pamphlet because I'm like, wow, this is really comprehensive.
Well, it can be for anybody, really. But the essence of it and the reason why I created it is I remember when in 2016, when I was first able to vote, I was a political science major, everything, and I was still surprised how far down the ballot things go. And so I know, and also I've been registering people to vote for, years now, like 5 years now. And one thing that I always hear is like, well, I don't know anything to be able to make that choice to vote. So that might be a reason why people don't register or don't complete their ballot. And so my whole goal is to basically, with their ballot, with their voter pamphlet and this guide, they would be able to have the confidence to be able to register, to complete their ballot, turn it in, and feel confident in whatever choice they may feel. Like you said earlier, I don't care who you vote for. I want to make sure that it's who you want to vote for, but I want you to be able to make at least that choice and that vote for yourself. And so that's kind of the reason why, how I created it, why I created it. And what's in there, I thought of what are all the possible questions someone might have when they have their ballot in their hands. So there's a checklist in there to walk you through the steps on like what you need to do between now and election day. There's a timeline between now and election day. All of the possible positions on the ballot that you might have on your ballot, the definitions are in there, so you know at least what they're supposed to be doing. It also gives you tips on how to find your candidates and find information for to know which one's best for you, as well as all of the county elections offices numbers and hours of locations, so you can call them up or go to a voting center if you can't get a mail-in ballot because you're unhoused or you're very transient, or you need to register to vote on election day. So the whole goal was, if you didn't know anything about this process, what tools can I give you to be able to have a little bit better understanding and feel a little bit more confident in completing your ballot?
And Maya, I wanted to talk about this and try to get as much in as we can about this, but also I want to squeeze some time in here because with all of this going on, there's still the census.
It's still the 2020 census.
and the deadline for the census is approaching. I want to make sure that we end again talking about voting, but let's talk a little bit about the census, what's going on next week, and again, the value and importance of the census, because both these things are intrinsically intermingled.
Yeah, they're intertwined. And so next week on the 23rd, we're going to be having our Census Day of Action, where it's going to be at Church by the Side of the Road in Tukwila. So if you're in the Tukwila or the SeaTac area, we are going to have some food there. We're going to have some masks and some hand sanitizer to give out. And then also, letting people know, like, have you completed the census? Let's take the time in doing that today, because like you said, the timeline is quickly approaching on the 30th, and we know that the best way to have an accurate census is for people to self-respond. And so we're really, really trying to encourage people to self-respond for the census today if they haven't, but we're going to make time on the 23rd for people specifically in Tukwila and SeaTac to come and have some free food, have some fun times, but also make sure that they complete the census.
All right. Again, if you're joining us, we're talking about National Black Voter Registration Day, the impact that the pandemic has had on registering voters, and in particular, Black voters. National Black Voter Registration Day is today. My guest is Maya Manus, the Advocacy and Civic Engagement Coordinator of the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. We're going to be starting a pedal to the metal campaign to educate voters and create awareness so that you can make the best decision that you can make for the issues that concern you and that you feel impact and affect your community. So it's going to be all-out blitz. We're going to let the dogs out to get people know and that they can get information, how they can get information, and then you can engage, and then we want you to activate as well. Maya, I want to give you opportunity for final words here that you want to say about anything, the importance of voting, again, reiterating your messages about National Black Voter Registration Day, which is today, National Voter Awareness Week, which is next week, and again, why this is important to the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle.
Yes, so anybody, if they're wanting to register to vote or find out our voter guide, they can go to urbanleague.org and check that out. If you want a voice in how we are going to reinvest in our communities, have a voice in police accountability, have a voice in, direct cash assistance, even have a voice for our undocumented families in Washington State, I'd highly suggest, if you can, to register to vote. I want to also highlight, which doesn't get a lot of, word in Washington State, is if you're not under DOC supervision, you can register to vote in Washington State. So if you have a Washington State felony, but not under DOC supervision at all, you can register to vote today. You would just need to re-register. And so I just want to highlight that, local elections matter. We need your voice specifically for local elections. And if you need any help on registering to vote, check out our website at urbanleague.org.
We'll be hosting roundtable discussions presented by the Urban League, an opportunity to you hear candidates being interviewed. We'll be sharing a number of information. And as a community member, hey, we want to hear your voice too. So if there are issues and concerns that impact you, get in touch with us. We want to share with our community what your concerns are, because sometimes it's necessary to find out that you're not alone in thinking what you're thinking. And as you mentioned, Maya, there's not a lot of gathering going on where people used to be able to share information. And so you might be thinking, do I just feel this way? Well, that's why it's important and to get the word out and the messaging out. Maya, for anyone who wants to get this first-time voters guide that you put together, which again I'm calling a pamphlet, whatever it is, it's a wealth of information. How can they get down? What can they do to get a hold of this?
Yeah, they can go on our website. They can also text ULMS votes to 52886. That is texting ULMS votes to 52886. Or they can go on our website. And on our homepage, it's right. They scroll down a little bit and they can access it right there.
Again, give that information one more again, and then tell us how we can also get in touch with the Urban League.
Yes. So to be able to access our first-time voter guide or pamphlet, they can go to urbanleague.org, or they can text ULMS votes to 52886. So urbanleague.org or ULMS votes to 52886.
All right.
Thank you so much.
I'm temporarily suspending this interview because I'm not going to be Tony B on the air. This is going to be Tony, just a citizen like everybody else. I just want to commend the Urban League and Michelle Merriweather, what you guys are doing in our communities and the way that you stepped up to the plate. I just think it's awesome. It's good for our community, and it's good to see. My guest again, Maya Manus of the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. A little later on in the show, John Yasutaki will be here to talk with Sherilyn Easton, who's putting together a socially distanced haunted house, just doing this on her own. Again, it's great to highlight the way members of our community are responding to the pandemic. John will also be talking with Miko Pugal from the RVC. Coming up next, Ashley Stinger will be talking to Betty Lau and Brian Chow about the impact of the coronavirus on CID, the Chinatown International District, and its name change. If you haven't heard about it, you're going to find out about that as well here in a couple minutes. We'll be back. Thank you again, Maya, for joining us. Look forward to sharing information and creating awareness about the upcoming candidates and election, and we'll be back with more right after this.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and when I'm not using my GPS to navigate the land of 1,000 dances, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.